One of the best upgrades that we can make to a car audio system is to upgrade the factory radio to an aftermarket head unit. An aftermarket head unit not only has better sound processing that sends a better signal to our amplifiers and speakers, but it also has a wide variety of different features. Wireless Bluetooth, HD radio, the ability to play lossless audio files, and lately adding Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. But there are many challenges with installing one of these. What wiring harness do you need? Will this actually fit your vehicle? How do we take apart the dash, and how does this actually fit? In this video, I'm going to show you guys an awesome resource that we can use to answer all of these questions. I'm also going to show you the in-depth installation process for installing a receiver head unit that can be used for just about any vehicle. Let's dive on in. So what is the first step to install our new aftermarket radio? Well, that's research. We need to determine what will fit and what we need, and there's a company that absolutely specializes in this called Crutchfield. Now in a second here, we're gonna hop on a computer and I'm gonna show you that full research process, but real quick, full disclosure, Crutchfield was super cool and reached out to me and asked to sponsor this video. I was really excited to hear from them because I've actually used Crutchfield for a long time, long before I even started the YouTube channel, so I feel more than comfortable on referring you guys to them to help you out. Let's get started with researching and picking our gear. To start with picking our gear, we're going to go to www.crutchfield.com, and since we're doing a car audio installation, we'll click car audio and video, and then we'll click find what fits your vehicle. Now, one of the things that's really awesome about Crutchfield is they have a full library of different vehicles and tons of information about each vehicle that is going to make it much more simple for us to install. You can see in this case, I'm picking a 2007 Pontiac Grand Prix, and this does have the Monsoon sound system. Now that I've completely picked the vehicle, you can see, okay, yep, that's definitely the right vehicle. Now check this out. They have a full library of different pictures for this vehicle, which is really helpful to see. I can kind of see what I'm getting myself into. Here's what it looks like in the dash with the radio removed. We can also see, okay, there's our door panel. So if we were doing a speaker installation, we would know what that would entail as well. So we'll scroll down on our vehicle page a little bit more, and here is the Crutchfield Mastersheet. I'll explain this a little bit more in detail in a second. In the meantime, we want to look for products that fit my vehicle. So in this case, I'm going to do in-dash DVD receivers. Now, as we scroll through and look at some of the different options for the receivers that we can purchase, we can see right here this little green check mark and it says fits. That way I know that this is going to fit into my vehicle. Now for some vehicles, they might have a limited space behind the dash. So you might have some head units that are deeper than what will fit, and in that case you will see where it will say it does not fit. This is really helpful because you're not going to end up with gear that you can't install. So in the meantime, I know that I want to get a Pioneer. So I've got it filtered down to Pioneer, and I know I'm trying to decide between the AVH 1440 NEX and the AVH 2440 NEX. I'm curious what the difference is between these two products. So here we are on the comparison page, and we could compare multiple different head units, but in this case, I'm going to compare just these two because I've narrowed it down to these two. Now, I'm an Android user, and I definitely want Android Auto, and I can see right here that, okay, this particular head unit model does not have Android Auto, but this one does. So I see all the other features that I want here, so I'm going to go ahead and add this to cart. Now here's where Crutchfield really excels. Right away they give me this pop-up and they're going to tell me that there's a couple of different options for all the gear that I can use to install into the vehicle. Now I know that this is where a lot of people struggle because I get messages about this kind of thing all the time. They ask, hey, should I use this integration harness or should I use this integration harness? And right here, Crutchfield makes it super easy. We can see that if I use the a little bit more expensive option, I get to retain my steering wheel controls. I get to retain my OnStar. I would lose satellite radio, but that's something that you're going to retain through the head unit itself, not through the vehicle anymore. So I know that I definitely want to retain my steering wheel controls, so I'm going to go with this option. Something else that's worth noting here is with your installation gear, when you purchase it with your new receiver, you're going to get instant savings. So I can see we've got the fit kit here, I've got the harness, and I get the master sheet. If I did want to see more information about one of these parts, for example, let's say I want to see more information about the harness, I can click it. And that brings up this page, and again, something I absolutely love as an installer is on all of Crutchfield's product pages, they link a PDF owner's manual. This is so invaluable, the fact that I can easily read this before I order it, just to make sure that it's going to accomplish everything that I want to do. I'm definitely going to proceed with this option here, so I'll add it to cart. After adding to cart, I get this pop-up, and something I'm going to have to do when I go to install the new head unit is I have to connect the head unit's wiring to that new aftermarket harness that's included. If that's something that you're not comfortable with, Crutchfield will actually do it for you. In this case though, I'm going to say no thanks. On this page here, they give us a couple of recommended installation tools, but for the most part, they tell us that I'll have to have these tools, which I probably have on hand, a number 2 Phillips screwdriver, which I do, and a small flat blade. Take me to the cart. So here we are in the shopping cart. We can do a final review. I've got my head unit, I've got the installation gear, including the fit kit there, and then I have the master sheet. And once I place my order, the master sheet is going to come to me as an electronic PDF that I can then print out, and I'll show you guys this in the installation procedure. Now guys, real quick, you're going to want to stay tuned until the end of the video because I have something special that you're going to want to take a look at. So after a few days now, our package has arrived. Now they were quick to send a tracking number and shipping was nice and speedy. And you can see right away, we have some contact information if we need it, if we have any questions. A little brochure about Crutchfield, information about the order, their return policy. If we have any questions, we can call them 7 days a week. A little bit of an airbag warning fact sheet here. And finally, they've included some return labels in case there is an issue and we need to make a return. Now Crutchfield also sends this via email. It's a PDF document. You could open it on your phone, but in this case I printed it off just to show it to you guys a little bit more effectively. This is the master sheet, and what this document is a complete document that gives us all the information that we're going to need to install this radio step by step. We can see that this is for the vehicle that we've selected, the Pontiac Grand Prix. And one of the first things we're going to see here is something that I really love. It gives you a complete breakdown of all the different tools that you're going to need. What's really nice about this is you don't want to start taking apart the dash and then realize that you don't have a particular size socket or something like that, and then have to reassemble your dash and drive out to the store. Also, we can see a breakdown of the different installation procedures and what we're going to need for each of those installations. So in this case, I'm doing a factory radio removal. Let's get those tools. Phillips screwdriver and panel tool. Flip to the next page here. We can see that the master sheet includes several different pictures of the process, and we're going to get to that in a second. First though, I want to unbox and open this. This stuff here is our new harness and control unit that will allow us to interface the new aftermarket head unit with the vehicle. The reason I wanted to unbox this first is I wanted to grab this harness because I want to make sure that it plugs in to the vehicle. So let's take this over to the vehicle and start removing the factory radio. In order to start the installation process, I'm going to remove the ground connection from the battery. Okay, so I've got my harness, I've got my master sheet, and I've got my tools here all ready to go, and we can just start reading through each of these steps. Now Crutchfield really thinks of everything. First of all, look, they remind us to eject the disc from the factory unit. I can't even tell you how many times I've accidentally removed the factory unit and then realized there was still a CD in it, and then I had to plug it back in just to eject that CD. So we're good to go there. I've set the parking brake and disconnected the negative battery terminal, and now I can start prying around the edges of the trim panel in order to remove it. One of the most difficult things about removing trim panels is knowing exactly where to pull on the panel to remove it so that we do not destroy any part of the panel. You can see here that we have nice convenient pictures showing us each different thing that comes apart. So following the pictures as a guide, I carefully go around the outside perimeter and remove the trim panel. So here's what my dash looks like with the trim bezel removed, and obviously this installation procedure is going to be different for every vehicle, but again, Crutchfield makes it easy, and we can see here now it shows exactly all the different bolts that I need to take out in order to remove the radio and remove this climate control unit. I carefully read each of the steps from the master sheet and just proceed with following those directions. All right, so we've got the radio completely removed. Now here's the first thing that I just wanted to double check. I just want to make sure that this harness plugs into this one. As you can see on screen, it does, so we are good to go. So I know that our new interface harness fits the vehicle, and obviously that plugs into the brain here, and then on the other side of the brain, we have this harness that plugs in, and what this harness is going to connect to is our head unit's harness. Let's move this aside for now, and we can open up our new head unit. Here we go, right on top here, this is what we need, but let's go ahead and look at everything else that's included with our head unit. Now some of the things you see here are going to be pretty common for all the different head units that are on the market. We have a remote control, we have an auxiliary USB plug, we have some hardware for attaching the head unit to our new fit kit, we have a microphone for our Bluetooth hands-free so that we can talk over the phone, of course have some instructions, and then inside here we have the head unit itself. There it is. On the back of the head unit here, we of course have all of our different connections that we're going to be making, but let's start with actually getting this harness wired up by joining the harness that came with the aftermarket head unit to the harness that's part of our control unit. Now, if there was a complicated part of the procedure, this would definitely be the most complicated part. And my biggest tip for you guys is just to make sure that you read through all of the directions. The reason that you want to do that is just to kind of know what to expect. I know it can kind of look daunting, but there's just a bunch of information here for different head units. So really, once you narrow it down to what particular brand of head unit you're using, it's not that bad. For my process here to join these two harnesses, I'm going to be using a wire stripper. I also have this soldering iron along with some solder. And finally, to protect each of the connections, I'm going to be putting a heat shrink tube over each one and heat shrinking it down. Now that's just my process. There are other ways to accomplish these tasks. For example, instead of using wire strippers, you could use a sharp knife to carefully cut the insulation and then remove it away. Now, because the connections are going to be different for each vehicle and each different head unit type, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on each of these different connections. Instead, just know in general, you're going to connect wires that are the same color on each side of the harness, but you definitely want to double check the directions. The advantage of having these directions and getting the wiring harness from Crutchfield is these guys go through extensive testing to make sure that they pair you up with the right harness for your vehicle. Bottom line, if you have a question, questions come up during the install process, you have a helping hand that can help you out. You just reach out to Crutchfield and call them at their number, and they're there to help 7 days a week. So I've made all my wire connections now, and I think where a lot of people that are doing this for the first time get confused is it's perfectly normal to have some leftover wiring. You have to remember that these harnesses are made for a wide variety of vehicles and different options and different radios, so it's completely normal to have some particular wires that you're not using within your vehicle. For any of the extra connections I have left over, I just wrap them with tape so that they're nice and constrained and out of the way, and I leave a little flag at the end of the tape so that if I do need to access those wires, it's easy to open it up. Now, before we plug in the brain unit here, this is why it's important to read the directions. I can see that there's a rotary switch on the side of this brain right here, and I need to actually set that switch before I plug it in. I'm using a Pioneer, so I need to set this to number 7. With all my wiring prepared, I can start making all of these connections to the brain. I've got all those connections made, and this unit also allows us to retain a chime. So this is the chime module that comes with it, and we'll plug that in as well. In the meantime, I've completely wrapped each of these harnesses with tape. Now this is absolutely not required, but I just like my installs to be as clean as possible, so I bundle everything up, and I also find that it prevents any rattling inside of the dash. So for now, we can set our full wiring harness aside, and we're going to grab our radio, and we're going to move on to the next step of the process here, our receiver installation into our fit kit. Cut this open and see what we have inside. And this is fairly simple. We have our trim bezel and our 2 side plates. Start with carefully pushing these tabs in so I can remove this inner piece of trim. And now I will take the side plates and install them into the edges here. And again, every fit kit on the market is going to be different based on your type of vehicle, but the directions that come from Crutchfield make it easy. And if you have any questions, you can of course always give them a call. I will now slide the head unit into the cage here. We'll snap this trim ring into place. Now I will use this hardware that came with the head unit to attach on the side panel of the radio. The trim bezel that will hold this into the vehicle is now attached to the radio, and as we can see on the master sheet, we know where we're going to have to reapply some of the fasteners to hold it into the vehicle. Now before we get this mounted into the vehicle, I do want to show you the connections that we are going to make onto the back of the unit, because once we're in the vehicle, it's going to be difficult to show you guys those connections on camera. So first we have our harness that we made. These two connections here at the end of the harness are going to plug into the vehicle itself. On the other end of the harness, we have our radio connection. Now remember that this is the connection that came with the head unit, and we connected it to our new harness. So that's going to plug in right there. Now also off the harness, we have this connection here. What this connection is for our steering wheel controls. The steering wheel controls are connected through this harness into the brain, and then the brain will know how to interpret those controls in order to tell the head unit what to do. We will plug that in right here to our hardwired remote. Now also included with the harness is this. I haven't shown you guys this yet, but this is the antenna adapter. The antenna in the vehicle is not the same size, so we plug this into the aftermarket head unit, and then this will plug in to our antenna in the vehicle. Here's some items that came with the head unit. This is going to be our Bluetooth microphone. This has a nice long cable because we will run it up the A-pillar and near the sun visor or another location in the vehicle that allows this microphone to pick up our voice well while we're driving, and that will plug in this microphone spot right here. Next up, we have another wire that was included with the head unit, and this is a USB extension. What we can do is we can plug this end into the head unit, and then the other end of the USB, we can run this somewhere in our vehicle that we will plug in our phone USB wire. So this gives us our connection to Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. We could also use this connection for something like an iPod or a USB memory stick. Now, depending on what else you're going to install into your car audio system, you have a number of other connections here. Some are for video, some are for auxiliary output and auxiliary input, but some of the connections I'm going to be using are these connections here for RCA wires to send signal to my aftermarket amplifiers. Making these connections is easy enough. It would look something like this. So I'm gonna head on over to the vehicle and get all of these connections made. So what I've done is I've connected the multiple different harnesses into the vehicle, and I'm holding the radio in with just 2 of the mounting screws. I've reconnected the negative battery terminal, and I'm going to do a quick test just to make sure that all the functionality is working as intended. It looks like my steering wheel controls are good to go, and I've got output from my speakers, so now I can continue to reassemble the entire dash. To reassemble everything here, I'm just going to do the reverse process outlined in the master sheet. So here we have it. Let's turn on the radio and make sure everything is working now that we have completely reinstalled everything. Whenever we finish installing a head unit, it's a good idea to run through all of the sources and make sure that everything is working. So because we were careful to follow all the steps outlined in the instructions and within the Crutchfield Mastersheet, we are good to go now, and we have a new head unit receiver installation that will last us for years. And if we turn up the volume here, it sounds great too. Now, a quick side note here about the master sheet is this not only shows how to remove the factory radio and reinstall a new one, but it also shows lots of information for installing speakers. In this case, we could see the dash speaker installation, the front door speakers, along with the rear deck speakers as well. So if we did want to do a speaker install and we weren't quite sure how to do so or what would fit, Crutchfield can help with that as well. Now, I have something special for you guys. Crutchfield was super cool, and they hooked us up with a CarAudioFabrication fan-only discount. Guys, you definitely want to check it out. Click the link down in the video description. Next time you're planning out a car audio install, whether it's installing a new head unit or speakers or other car audio items, definitely consider Crutchfield. They're there to help, and they have a ton of really invaluable information that will really help you out on the installation process. A special thanks goes out to Crutchfield and for partnering with me on this video. It really helps me to make other videos here on this channel. And hey, if you're new here and you want to check out some of my other videos, you can do so here on screen. As always, thank you for watching. Don't forget to design, build, and install.